Hey, and welcome to another week of Libertarians at Large. My name is Eric Rautzep, and this is where we discuss the week in the news and express a libertarian point of view for the goings-on in our nation and abroad. We welcome your comments and your questions in the chat box, so feel free to comment regularly. We may share your comments on the air. This week, I am joined by my fellow at-large members, Laura Ebke and Valerie Sarwa. How's everyone doing?
Hey, Eric. Good.
And this week we have a very special guest, Evan McMahon, from the chair of the state of Indiana, the great state of Indiana.
Hello. Hey, Evan.
Oh, welcome.
Oh. So how's everyone's week been?
I thought today was Wednesday, so how about you?
It's been a horrible day for me too. I've never seemed to get my feet under myself today. It's just been one of those days.
Well, it's almost bedtime.
Yeah. Oh, but it's been a crazy week too. I mean, there's been a lot that's been going on in the news and around the world actually. What have you guys seen that kind of sparks some interest or conversation with everything that's been going on?
Okay, I missed something. Did you see Reverend Joe Brooks III comment over here? The earth is growing.
Is it literally growing?
I must have missed something.
Yeah, I believe I may have missed something on that as well.
Okay.
We all miss something.
We'll have to see if we can get him to tell us more. And
Yeah.
Apollo tells us that the Wyoming session ended yesterday and the Utah convention is this weekend. So there we go. And Jared says, look more enthused, Evan.
Smile, Evan.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh, great. Okay. Well,
there's all sorts of stuff. People are talking like crazy. Okay. What is the Libertarian stance on collective bargaining? Man, so this is deep.
If I can jump in, I actually just wrote 15 letters to unions in Indiana, trade unions, all private sector unions, talking about why they should support libertarians. Actually, and I'm going to give you guys a secret campaign strategy thing here for fundraising as a pro tip. I sat down and I looked at who had donated to our state Republican Party and our state Democrat Party, and I compared the list to see who had donated to both. And then I wrote letters to each of them on things that were relevant to libertarianism, something that we can have a positive message on. And wrote them letters basically saying, hey, you gave to them, give to us too. We're good on this issue. And one of the subjects was trade unions. And Rupert Bonham, who was a candidate in 2012 for governor of Indiana, was a proud stagehand union. And basically, we were dealing with the right to work right to work here in Indiana that year. And we said, listen, public sector unions, that shouldn't be a thing, because the employees taxpayers shouldn't be forced to negotiate with employees from the state. But private sector unions, in an even world where you don't have a federal labor board that is completely one-sided to labor, businesses should be able to negotiate with their employees how they see fit, and right-to-work laws interfere with those rights of the business and the employees to negotiate fair contracts. So collective bargaining on the on the private scene, I think is fair game if that industry and those companies want to negotiate that. If they want to use collective bargaining as a way to lower their healthcare costs or balance out the give and take on perf and benefits, that's perfectly reasonable. And as a private industry, they should be able to do that. But so I wrote a letter basically saying that, as well as if we're going to have public education, maybe we should incorporate allowing more credit hours in high schools to be earned through VOTAC programs and journeyman programs and apprenticeship programs from trade unions who currently right now the vast majority of them are reporting that more than 75% of their workforce are within 10 years of retirement age. So they're struggling for members, but also we're going to be struggling for skilled labor as well in a few years. So maybe we should have that balance of saying, public schools should give some credit towards doing these VOTAC or apprenticeship programs through skilled unions and trade groups.
Yeah, I mean, you raised some very good points there.
I know.
And you're modest as always.
Don't start me though, because I've had my run. I mean, as a general concept, I agree that unions ought to be able to do what unions do, organize. As certainly the private sector ones. Got a little more problem with the public sector unions, but I think that there is, and the trade unions especially are important, but they're also problematic, especially in the area of occupational licensing. I've been having battles with one big trade union here in Nebraska, and they don't want to let anybody who hasn't gone through their apprenticeship program get any credit. We had a guy here in Nebraska who had been in the Navy as a construction electrician for 8 years. He had done the Department of Labor apprenticeship program. And when he came back to Nebraska, the union, which basically owns the licensing board, said, no, we'll give you 1 year of credit, so we had to fight that one a little bit. So, I think there's good and bad things about all the unions, and certainly people ought to have the opportunity to organize as they see fit. However, there's always a however whenever I start talking about unions.
Well, I think we should hold unions more to the standards of a 501c4 instead of a 501c7. So, federally speaking, just with the powers and the rights that are granted them, I think we allow them into the political arena a little too much, and they are. I agree they have to talk about the issues, and I agree that they have to address things that impact their membership. But beyond that, I don't know. I think that could be political pandering, and that doesn't serve their members as well as they should.
Well, I have somebody here in Nebraska who is the deciding vote on a committee to get my occupational licensing bill out of committee. And he said, this senator has literally said, I'll vote it out as soon as the union says it's okay. That's when you start running into a problem.
Yeah.
So we have to figure out how to let them organize privately and do what they need to do in a labor labor management relationship without having an undue influence on what we're doing, in legislatures and other elected positions.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so what else?
Well, I think Paul just kind of hit on the one thing that I've seen going around, and this is a long comment, but Biden stated that no amendment to the Constitution is absolute. Evan and I were kind of chit-chatting about this before. To me, this is ultimately scary to put such a fine point on this, to actually have a president admitting this. Now, a lot of people have commented that, and even Evan was bringing this up, that a lot of our amendments have been circumnavigated and a lot of our rights have been taken away. But I still find it very scary that a president is now defining this and putting such a fine point on this. What does everyone else think about this?
I think it's openly admitting it. We know that the Fourth Amendment, the Ninth and 10th Amendment, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment mean absolutely nothing because the courts have consistently said, hey, for safety or security or for the good of the economy, we're going to tell you you can't grow that wheat. We're going to tell you you can't read this book. We're going to tell you you can't do this or that. That for the safety of the country, we can access your phone. Spy on you with drones, or use stingrays to intercept your cell phone activity, or open your mail, physical mail that's coming from overseas. And the courts have upheld it because there was a national need at the time. I personally think that's horsepucky, and that's what libertarians have been fighting for since 1971, is that it is a line in the sand. No, you cannot do this. I don't believe my right to protect myself is granted to me by the Second Amendment of the Constitution. I believe that I have a natural right to protect myself. I have a natural right to say the things that I want to say. I also have to accept the responsibilities and repercussions of me exercising my rights. So if I say something that is offensive or repugnant and counter to what those around me think and feel, then I have to deal with the being ostracized, the consequences of what I'm saying or doing. We've been fighting for that for, coming up on 50 years. And it's a core principle of the Libertarian Party, is that your rights are absolute all the time, regardless of what that piece of paper says. We would be saying these things even if the Constitution didn't exist. These are rights that don't just exist for us that happen to be born in this geographical border we call America. They exist for every living person.
Yeah, I think you said it the best, is that these are rights that we are born with. They are our natural existence. They are not something granted by the government, but they are granted by government. I mean, they're granted by nature, not by government. And I think that is so important to recognize, that these are immutable. Or should be immutable.
It's I do a lot of work in the film space, and there are a lot of movies that I find unnecessary or even gross, and my censorship comes with my dollars or my streaming hours. I don't watch it, or I don't talk about it, or I don't promote it.
Right.
I don't need the government telling me that it's not safe for me to watch it, or it's not safe for me to read that book. As a matter of fact, anytime the government says you shouldn't read this book is banned, I go out and I find a copy in another country just so I can read it, to see if it was as scary as they say it is. But so that's, we have to be consistent in our message that these are basic natural rights that are not granted to us by the Constitution. And actually, even, from a basic standpoint, the Constitution isn't granting us those rights. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights is actually restricting government's ability to limit those rights. That's something that I think a lot of people forget when they're, maybe not us, libertarians, but I think a lot of people in the normal world forget that or don't know that. It isn't government permission. It's us telling the government, you shall not step on these things. This is not your purview. We, as the governed, do not give consent for you to mess around with these things. And we forget we're the governed, and it only exists by our consent, and we need to stop consenting to them doing this.
Yeah.
And the First Amendment makes a really, the leading words of the First Amendment: Congress shall make no law restricting. That leads off the whole Bill of Rights. This notion that we're placing those limits on the government action, and too many people think about that the Constitution, these constitutional rights are somehow granted by the government, when that's absolutely the opposite of the way it was intended.
Right.
I mean, I was having a conversation with my boyfriend. We were watching To Catch a Smuggler, which is by far the custom agent's best marketing tool to create new libertarians is that show. When you just watch how they treat people and how they retarget people based off of their own internal profiles, it's amazing. But so we're watching it, and I was like, yeah, so when I go through the airport, this is how I behave. And he's like, well, wouldn't it just be easier to do it like this? And I was like, yeah, it would be easier, but I don't care. It's none of their business. If they ask me, if somebody comes up to me and the line TSA is like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm doing good. You finding everything okay here in the airport and security land? I'm like, yeah, everything's great. And then they're like, so where are you going? None of your business.
Why?
Oh, well, why are you going there? Am I being detained? Where's your warrant? I'm not answering your questions. I'll take the 45-minute pat down. It's none of your business why I'm traveling and where I'm traveling to, other than what's written on my ticket. Like, no, it's none of your business. And he's like, why? Why would you do that? It would just be easier to do this, and then you don't have to bake in the 3-hour holding time every time you want to take a flight. And I say, yeah, it would be easier, but I need to be an active voice, and for other people, even if it's just the 3 people in that line behind me, seeing somebody calling them out and saying, this is none of your business, and what you are doing is abusive and wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, when I was pregnant, anytime I would go through the security, I would say, I don't want to go through that. And they're like, oh, it's safe. And I'm like, you're telling me my film out of my bags, and you're telling me to put my fetus through this x-ray machine. No, thank you. But there was other reasons. Obviously, libertarians don't really do this thing. But now I still don't do it. No babies, Evan, just in case you're wondering.
I think you need one more.
Yeah.
Just one more. Then you can name him Evan. Or her Evan.
You can say we're her. But no. But thank you, but no.
So Earl and Rose asked a good question there.
How can a citizen refuse to consent effectively without being targeted by our government?
So I am on every possible watch list imaginable. I'm not on the no-fly list, but even on the 2 times they messed up and put me on the pre-list, while I was in line for that, somebody came by, looked at my ticket, and was like, oh, you're not supposed to be in this line, even though it was clearly marked that I was available to go through pre. And I was like, okay, so somebody ran my name, and they were like, not Evan. I was flying with Valerie's husband, and they wanted to swab our hands to see if we had explosive residue on our hands. And it's like they weren't doing it to anybody else but the 2 libertarians in the line. That's who gets the swab test. And it's you're going to get targeted whenever you are resisting or speaking truth to power. You are going to be targeted. The question is, how much targeting and how much crap are you willing to put up with? Or are you willing to accept to fight for ultimate liberty? I know that there are police in my neighborhood who know me. They know what I'm like. They know what I'm about. They're actually more friendly to me now. But there are times like when they're coming and doing things in the neighborhood, they don't come to my yard. They stand outside my yard and get my attention. They know better. So you can still have a positive impact even while being a pain in the rear. But you just have to make that choice for yourself of how much targeting are you willing to risk. I guess not accept is the wrong word, but risk. And then that determines how aggressive or in your face or vocal or public you're going to be. Are you the type of person who's going to drive undocumented people to courthouse meetings and then not consent to ICE getting into your vehicle and putting that viral video up? Are you going to go to that level? Are you going to go put yourself between an unlawful cannabis dispensary in an illegal state Are you going to go and stand in front of a bulldozer at a homeless tent camp city? What are you willing to do? Are you just willing to write op-eds and letters to the editor? Whatever you can do that is comfortable for you to resist, that's what you should be doing.
It's like and I think this is probably a phrase that Laura uses frequently, pick your battles. Like what is the battle that you find, yes, I'll go that far, but I won't go that far. You're fighting over something that you find important, but somebody else might not think is as important. So yeah, I think it's very individualized as to where you want to go on that spectrum.
And everybody's tolerance for, what battle they want to fight, and how far they can go are different. I mean, it depends on, it depends on where you live and how you live and, whether you get kids still in the house. And I mean, there's all sorts of things that play into that. And I think that we need to be respectful of people who maybe aren't as willing to go as far as we are. Or people who go, people who decide to go further. I mean, I'm pretty mild mannered in my approach to some of these things. I try to do most of my talking rhetorically, about things, and I'm not a very good protester. I really am not. But I mean, this summer, my daughter and son-in-law got arrested in Omaha doing a Black Lives Matter support kind of thing. And, good for them. They were comfortable taking that on and but it's not something that I would have done. And, we all have different talents, skills, tolerance, and that's okay. That because it takes all kinds, to kind of make the full puzzle.
Agreed.
Just that last question there.
Yeah, from Deference, I was going to bring that up. Is the LP prepared to pick bigger battles and take heat from corporate press on issues that are important in the future? And I don't know. I think we already do. We've been kind of leading the political discussion since our inception. What does everyone else think?
I mean, the LNC just put out the COVID resolution about, and then I don't even think COVID passports, vaccine passports, whatever we're calling it. I don't even think that's going to happen because it's so crazy. But the resolution is already out there. Like I think we got ahead of that. What else?
And I think that the Libertarian Party is certainly willing to take on some of those tough issues. The reality of it, though, is that until we're in a position like Indiana has been, where you have a high, yay, where you have where you've had a candidate who has done incredibly well and gotten that sort of national attention. Nothing we do is going to get that much attention because we don't have the, we don't have the kind of power that people are paying attention to. And so it's sort of a which comes first, chicken and egg and everything. But it's at some level we have to gain some serious credentials in order to get some of the mainstream media to pay attention to us.
So I will say that the World Health Organization, who came out against vaccine passports for now, and they were very clear that they are for now against vaccine passports, actually raised a lot of the same points that we did in our letter that was posted 3 days earlier. So I'd hope that the World Health Organization is reading our resolutions, or we have just a lot of the same great thoughts. Yeah, I mean, that's something to.
So, I talk a lot about the difference between radical and pragmatic libertarians and why there is a need for both, and both are important to the soul of the Libertarian Party and the movement. And the big thing for me is I look at the examples I give are some of the topics that were being debated by the party in the late 70s, the early 80s, including gun control. and the radical message on gun control helped steer a course of conversation over 40 years. Our conversations on LGBT equality under the law, and I do mean equality under the law, not special rights, but government treating its citizens equally, equal application of the law. And the Libertarian Party was the first party to talk positively about gays and lesbians and the trans community. And in the trans community was in 1978.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were the party that started the conversation about criminal justice reform. Mm-hmm. We were the party who were talking about ending the drug war. Mm-hmm. All of those things became popular in one of the other two parties in the last 10 years. But our conversations, our debates, our continued messaging and pushing on those radical ideas that the press called us crazy and you know, whack jobs and Looney Tunes for decades. Now those things are mainstream or becoming mainstream. So I listen to the radical voice today in the party. What they're advocating today is likely to be mainstream accepted policy 40 years from now. Yep. Hopefully we get better at pushing that that timeline. So maybe it's not a generation, maybe it's a little quicker.
It would be nice.
But that's who we've been. Republicans and Democrats, you know, one, it doesn't matter what they say because they're lying. They don't really believe whatever it is they're saying. If they did right now, cannabis would be legal, immigration would be open. You know, they have the majority. These things happen. Here in Indiana, we have an absolute super majority of Republicans at every level of government, but yet they just raised taxes. They just created new taxes. They're talking about expanding red flag laws in Indiana. And, you know, you're sitting here going, what happened to all the things you were just running on a year ago? Like, what happened? Did you forget? Did you fall down and hit your head? Like, what's going on? So we've been consistent in our messaging and consistent in pushing those ideas that maybe aren't mainstream yet, but one day will be. And we can see direct impacts on policy. You know, Laura Ebke, when she was a senator in Nebraska, you know, libertarians were the first to be talking about occupational licensing. Laura Ebke got a major hurdle lifted in the Nebraska legislature. She spearheaded that. Here in Indiana, we have an expungement law that says after 10 years, you can get your rights restored. That came from a libertarian conversation that Governor Mike Pence, of all people, pushed for because he said, you know what, the libertarians were right. We need to be the worst state to commit a crime, but the best state for second chances. That came from us. So, you know, we are pushing that radical message that ends up becoming policy later down the road. And I think we're still doing that today.
I think that's a really good point, Evan. I mean, not just about Nebraska and, you know, Laura Ebke, but I think that, I mean, you make a really good point that, I mean, it is important to have that, you know, sort of radical messaging to, you know, to keep us focused on where we want to go, even while there are pragmatists and others who, you know, are, you know, picking around in different ways to get things done. It's important, I think, that we have all of those together and that we quit thinking of each other as enemies and think of each other rather as on the same team with different functions. And that's something that just doesn't, you know, unfortunately, in my time in the Libertarian Party, it seems like we too often, you know, all face in our, you know, in our circular firing squad and fire at each other rather than face outward and recognize that we all have different directions to fire, but we're firing at the bad guys. You know, that's not a very nappy kind of thing to say, but I mean that we're going after the bad guys instead of each other, and you know, hopefully over the next few years, and certainly the things that you're doing in Indiana, hopefully we can, you know, bring that message to the larger libertarian population and say, hey, you know, let's quit fighting with each other. Let's fight the people that are actually trying to steal our liberty.
Well, and I think a lot of it actually is the fact that we're succumbing to the political landscape in the United States, and the political landscape is extremely adversarial right now.
So
So we're treating each other within our own party as adversaries, and we're not looking to move forward together, and we need to overcome that. We need to be the change, and we need to be the difference.
Well, and it's in some ways it seems like what we see is we have, different elements of the LP who are all trying to, claim political control of our little itty bitty pond, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of having us all work together to try to claim control of of the larger political lake. And I mean, I think that's, I like to use analogies, and some of them really suck. I get it, but but I do think that it's important for us to figure out how to work together better, mm-hmm. and to focus our efforts on the bad guys instead of on each other.
Yes. I look at it and I think that a lot of the division that we have in the party right now are well-meaning people who do love liberty, but they each have their own idea of what's most important and then how to achieve that goal. And if you're, I know you guys aren't the same. You don't do this at all, but this is very important to me. The fight for liberty is about the most important thing in my life, and I'm the only person that feels that way, and I know that. That's a joke. Don't send me hate mail. But, we're all, like, when you get involved in this, in the back of your mind, it's a losing fight. You know you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to win this one little part of this great big puzzle. And so when other people don't agree with your way or your point on that subject, it becomes personal to you. So I try in my own self, thanks, Jared, I try to think about what Dr. Michael Munger said. Great candidate, great libertarian, professor at Duke. I think so. He's an economist. He talks about the train to Libertopia. And the difference between directional and destinational. Directional are libertarians who are, as long as we're moving towards Libertopia, we're all good. Destinational are, I want to be transported to Libertopia immediately today. And he says, essentially, everybody gets on the Liberty train. And we may get on at different points and at different stops. But as long as we're all on the tracks heading towards the same destination, that we need to work together. And we need to respect each other's perspectives and do our best to try to achieve that goal together. So that's how I view all of the different caucuses, all of the different people who are on this side of this libertarian platform and this side, as I try to say, hey, listen, I may not agree with you, but we're all trying to move in the same direction. So let's try to work on the things that we can work on together. And I take that same approach when I'm working with legislators in the State House, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, is, I don't like that you're for this and that you're pushing these bills that I can't stand. But you have this one thing over here that we're good on. Let's work on getting that passed. Let's work on getting this done. Let's, I'm still going to talk smack about you for this other horrible, horrible status thing you're doing, but let's work for the rest of it.
Absolutely. Okay, what time is it?
It's
Jared just pointed it out.
I know, it's 8:35. It's time for the New York Times news quiz. So this is the portion of the show.
Cicadas! Sorry. I get so excited. Well, I'm in Indiana. We're one of the places that gets hit by Brood X.
Yep.
So
There you go.
we can eat cicadas here. Like, we have recipes on how to cook them and eat them.
That sounds like
It's
delicious.
May not share those recipes. I'm sorry.
So how does this work? Do I have like a buzzer, or do I just blurt it out?
No. Well, we mainly just blurt.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. No, actually, in North Carolina, we also portions of North Carolina get hit with Swarm X, and there are barbecue recipes for cicada even here in North Carolina. I do not partake. So
Y'all foul.
Wrap them in aluminum foil
Mhm.
and put them on the grill. Delicious.
Yeah, I'll take your word for that.
So I opened our grill the other day. I was gonna grill something. We hadn't grilled for, I don't know, a while, and it was warm. I opened the grill, and somehow a mouse had gotten into our grill. I closed the grill and called my husband. I do not like mice, so, and I wasn't going to grill the mouse. I figured he could poison it or whatever. Whatever. Okay, I think it's cicadas.
So yeah,
Yeah.
we've already been talking about it. Absolutely correct. Billions of cicadas are from a group known as Brood-X are expected to emerge in the next few weeks. I've already started hearing the songs of cicadas here in North Carolina. So yeah, that just does not look appetizing to me. I'm sorry. Yeah.
You just rip the wings off, put a little sauce on them, steam cook them in some aluminum foil.
Oh my God. I'm
You
never.
know that crawfish, they are not. I'm sorry. It's just.
I did it when I was a kid. I was real young. I think it was my grandfather made them, and I tried one, and it was. I mean, it's gross, but I tell you what, packs protein. So if you're into bushcrafting or survivor skills, this is a great time of year.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Evan, if you've got the recipe, send it to one of us, and we'll share it to the business list.
Yes, that is happening.
Okay.
So the map below relates to the pandemic. What is true of the places tinted in orange? They all have Republican governors. They've seen fewer than 1,000 deaths of the virus. They have not yet seen a case of the B117 variant. They have vaccination rates above the national average, or they require mask wearing in public.
I think it's the vaccination rate because California does not have a Republican governor.
Correct.
Can you scroll down? Indiana has seen more than 1,000 deaths from the virus. California has the B117 variant. And Indiana ended its mask mandate and switched to an advisory on April 6th. So by deduction, I think like 1 in 5 in Indiana, or more than 1 in 5 in Indiana, have been vaccinated.
So we have to remember that this is the New York Times quiz from April the 2nd.
Oh, then require mask wearing in public.
Oh, good job.
Wow.
Evan, who I said, hey, then we do the New York Times news quiz. He's like, I don't pay attention to the news. I'm too busy.
I also tell people that I don't watch Netflix because I'm too busy. I do.
But really.
So busy.
Question 3. The new daily corona cases in the United States, more than 65,300 new cases on March 29th. The U.S. averaged about 65,000 new cases of coronavirus per day over the past week, a 19% increase from 2 weeks ago. Which 3 of the following can help explain why cases are rising? So we need 3 answers. B117, a more contagious variant, is spreading. Many Americans have begun to behave more cautiously. The country has not yet vaccinated enough people to reach herd immunity. All schools have now reopened, and states and cities have lifted restrictions.
And how many?
And this is what we think the New York Times is going to say.
And how many?
Correct.
How many are we supposed to choose?
3.
Well, states and cities have lifted restrictions because I know that they were hitting that in the news really hardcore the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I would say that also the New York Times would say that the country has not yet vaccinated enough to reach herd immunity.
And honestly, I mean, the B117, it would be the thing because that is here and spreading now. But I think that first one appeared just that week, the week of the 2nd. So I don't know if it's as spreading.
Yeah,
Well,
many
all
Americans have
schools have
begun.
not reopened, and why would Americans having begun to behave more cautiously include?
Right. So it has to be the
Has to be
11/7.
Maryland is still, I think, 100% remote.
And yep, that's all three of them.
Hey.
So we just got notice today. My son graduates on the 16th of May, right? And they sent us out the rules for graduation, which they're at least going to have one. And it says that let's see, only six guests will be allowed to attend per graduate, and masks are required. The guests will sit with their graduates. I'm trying to picture how this works. How are they going to do that? You know, that march and stuff. I mean, that'll be weird. So
Yes.
I'm gonna have to go to the senior parent meeting next week to find out what the story is on that.
Yep, and basically the description is exactly everything we talked about there. As Major League Baseball season begins, all 30 teams are allowing some fans in the stands, but only one has opened its stadium to full capacity. Which one? Los Angeles Dodgers, Toronto Blue Jays, New York Yankees, the Texas Rangers, or Detroit Tigers.
Was that the Rangers?
Yeah, I think it's.
I was thinking Texas Rangers too.
Yeah, it's the Texas Rangers.
Hey.
I got a sports question right.
Good job.
I've been trying to get that piece in Trivial Pursuit for decades.
A massive container ship was dislodged from the Suez Canal this week after being stuck for several days. Which methods were not used as part of an effort to free it? Choose 3.
Oh, jeez.
Another container ship gently nudged it. A full moon lifted tides an extra few inches. Mega cranes pulled the ship from the canal and turned it. Salvage teams were used front end loaders to dig around the ship, or a team of 2,000 oxen pried it loose.
I know that they did use the front end loaders.
Yeah.
Because I saw that photo, so it can't be that one. It says the methods were not part of the effort.
Correct.
Okay.
So it can't be the
I know that a mega crane did not pull the ship from the canal and turn it.
Okay.
Because, I mean, you see a huge crane lifting the ship up and turning it. So I'm fairly certain that's not occurred.
Well,
No, I
another
don't feel like
container
2,000
ship did gently nudge it.
Yeah.
So
And I don't feel like a team of 2,000 oxen pried it loose.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Seems like.
do you guys know that they're trying to blame the first female Egyptian captain? Trying to blame her for it, saying it was her fault.
You're kidding me.
Nope.
Well, was she the pilot on the ship, or?
I don't know. I didn't read the article. It was in
You can't drive, right? Well, so that leaves. We know that a salvage team used front end loaders, and we know that a container ship gently nudged it at some point, right? So,
But
full moon. Yeah, I think
last
full
week
moon
was the full moon.
okay.
Yeah, but is that real?
I don't know.
It's like a tide. It goes in and out. It doesn't stay all the way in.
Yeah, but it's the canal. Is that little bit of tiny shift going to lift that heavy of a vessel with that big of a
I don't know.
displacement?
Yeah, I don't, and it is such shallow water. I don't know if it would pull the water up a couple of inches. I mean,
I'm going moon.
Rob says it was full moon, cranes, and oxen.
okay, so
We'll see.
even though Apollo would like to remind us that the moon is real, so.
The moon is real. Our landing on it was not. I'm just kidding.
Oh, another container ship did not nudge it.
Huh.
Wait, yes, it did. I'm gonna write an angry letter to the New York Times.
Dear New York Times. Oh, this is an example of stupid.
We
Aided
received
by the
partial credit.
moon, the tide, and human salvage teams, the giant ship blocking the Suez Canal was freed Monday.
Wow. Wow, the moon.
Okay.
That's crazy. You feel like should have a better system for that than waiting
Just
for the
to wait
moon.
for full moon, yeah.
Right? Okay, so before we actually look at the answers the New York Times gives us here, what's happening in this photo?
Oh, it's a test of they're looking for like either anti-gravity or some sort of like Higgs boson. It's a science experiment.
Well, I was thinking funny answers. If you want to go with real answers, okay.
I don't know, faking the moon landing. That seems to be a theme for
Yeah, there
me.
you go.
Oh,
It looks like Antarctica.
yes.
Oh, Alaska.
Yes, that is definitely Antarctica.
Plasma ball outside a new children's museum in Anchorage. That's awesome.
Event organizers are hanging a solar-powered disco ball for a party at the Zuccanelli Station in Antarctica. Gamers are organizing a Pokemon LARP or a live-action role-play in Canada's Yukon Territory. A movie crew prepares the set for a scene in Dennis Van Nieuw's upcoming film Arrival at Hepapod's Return. Or scientists prepare to submerge a light-detecting orb 2,300 feet below the surface of Lake Baikal in Russia. Yeah.
Okay.
It's,
That one?
yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. The world's
Oh,
deepest
yeah, they're looking for tiny cosmic particles.
Yep.
From space.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
And Jay points out that all of the wrong answers are better than reality.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And Jay, I would agree with you on that one.
They always have the best.
Uh,
Oh boy, what's this?
Rapper Little Nas unveiled
X.
What?
Little Nas X. Little Nas
Little
X.
Nas X, sorry. Unveiled merchandise this week to help promote his new single and hell-themed music video. It caused some outrage. What product was it?
Shoes.
I know this one.
Yeah, Satan
Yeah.
shoes.
Okay,
I want to talk
wait.
about that.
Because you said shoes that way, you have to sing one line from the song.
Shoes. Oh, the song? Oh, I don't know the song. I don't know it at all. I haven't seen the video or anything. I actually didn't know much about Little Nas X, other
Neither
than
did I.
that he's a young gay black man who's pretty popular in the rap game. But so what fascinates me about this is there's already several legal precedents where you can take a product sold by another company and alter it, adulterate it, and then repackage it and sell it, as long as you're not trying to sell it as that company's original product. So there was a thing called White Trash Barbie. They actually won a case. Mattel sued them. There's a ton of those different products out there, and these shoes are the same company called Mischief, spelled like a millennial. They had done the same type of shoes called Jesus shoes that had holy water embedded in them, and it had a cross, and it had another New Testament. I'm pretty sure it was New Testament, but a New Testament chapter and verse scribed on it, and nobody was in an uproar about that. But then all of a sudden you do it for Satan, and everybody loses their mind, and Nike sued, and the court granted a temporary restraining order preventing Mischief from shipping the shoes that have sold. They made 666 pairs. 665 of them were sold. The last pair was going to be given away as part of a promotional prize thing. And Yeah, so now they stopped them from shipping the shoes while the case moves forward. Everybody already paid, and they paid like $1,800 a pair. Yeah, for a pair of basically black Nikes with a pentagram on them. It's kind of weird, but I think Nike is there was a lot of outrage and pressure, and I think that's where that stemmed from. But the law is very clear that it doesn't matter what the general public thinks. It only matters what the people who were purchasing it think. So if the people purchasing it thought they were Nikes, then you have a problem. But if the people purchasing it knew that it was adulterated product as part of an art project, then I don't think I don't think their case is going to hold up once it actually moves to the courts.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. There's way too much legal precedent in backing this up.
But, the moral outrage and, the cancel culture that exists on both sides of the aisle have to get their way. And, it's crazy to me that this is the thing that Nike was like, oh, no. Right. Foot down. We're stopping you, buddy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Civil rights groups and corporate leaders spoke out last week against something that happened in Georgia. What was it? The state approved a law that restricts voting access. The state enacted a law barring transgender athletes in girls' sports. The state issued a vast peach recall. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene hosted an anti-vaccine rally. Or Stacey Abrams announced that she would run for governor next year.
Voting laws, right?
It's voting access.
Yeah, it's their voting laws.
But it could have been any of those things,
right?
Except the peach recall. They're never going to admit that there was a problem with Georgia peaches.
No, it's a Georgia peach.
And that whole thing, like, there's both sides of that debate are using hyperbole. There are things in the state law that are significantly restrictive and that are punitive, but there are other things in there, like their voter ID law is actually no different than a lot of other states. But they actually expanded early voting access. Gave local municipalities the option to have more early voting days. So it's actually, when it comes to like early voting, it's actually better than New York, which was where MLB is located out of. But so, there were some good, some bad. I personally look at it, and when I see any state passing any voting access laws, I automatically look at them through the prism of they're screwing somebody. Because these guys, Republicans and Democrats, don't pass changes to election law unless it is protecting their seats and their rule. So I'm against it without even having to know what's in it, because I know that it's that type of game.
Oh yeah.
Same. And people are saying, "Oh, it's racist," or "It's not racist," or whatever. Whatever they're doing, there's shenanigans happening. And as libertarians, we know there's shenanigans happening. It doesn't matter like what the angle is. There's something that we're missing that is going to be bad for people. And I would like to talk to Joe Roberts. Yes, you popped in very late. It's 8:54 on your timestamp. We talked about it at the top of the hour about the gun thing. Sorry.
And basically we said, Biden's the president. He can do whatever he wants. And we just all need to follow suit. Well, it wasn't me. I argued against him. It was Valerie.
Face,
Yeah.
Go back and watch the rerun.
Yeah, exactly. No. President Biden said last week that he planned to run for re-election, but many have speculated that he may choose to serve only one term because of his age. Biden will turn 82 in 2024. Who is the most recent president to decline to run for re-election? Dwight D. Eisenhower, George H.W. Bush, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, or Harry Truman?
I think it was Johnson, because
Yeah.
Richard Nixon did.
Yeah.
George Bush did.
Yep.
Dwight
Eisenhower served 2 times.
It was Johnson. I will not run and I shall not serve.
Right, yeah.
It's got to be.
Yep.
Oh, we're on fire.
It was Johnson who announced he would not seek a second full term in the White House on national television 53 years ago this week. Truman was the second most recent.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's the fascinating. Go back up. Read the second part of that, because that's the fascinating part.
George
Both initially became president after their predecessors died.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
So Truman served almost all of Roosevelt's
Mm-hmm.
fourth
Third
term, and
Mhm.
so then he ran for re-election once, won,
Mm-hmm.
and so he served almost the 8 years.
Yeah, he served 7.
Yeah,
So actually, actually that would have
it
been.
hadn't been passed yet.
Yeah,
That
that's right.
amendment
That's what I
hadn't
was
been
just thinking
passed
about. Because under now, he wouldn't be eligible to
Right.
run for a second term because he would have served 3 years of the previous president's
Mm-hmm.
remaining term. But back then, it would have been allowed. Yep. The Biden administration plans to generate enough energy to power millions of homes by helping install dozens of what off the East Coast? Arc reactors.
That's what it should be.
Hydroelectric dams, oil rigs, or wind turbines.
Well, it's either hydroelectric dams or wind turbines, but I think the environmental groups are still really anti-hydroelectric dams. So it's probably going to be wind turbines. And I do vaguely remember him talking about wind turbines off the East Coast during his campaign.
Well, seeing that they're off the East Coast and you'd be then installing a hydroelectric dam in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean,
Yeah.
I would think that it has to be wind turbines. But
Yeah.
yeah, the other ones
there are ocean-bound or coastal dams that do exist.
Yes, this is true.
Just pointing that out.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. The Netherlands and Holland have the largest sea-based dam system in the entire world, and some of them do generate hydroelectric power, and they do face into the North Sea. So you are absolutely correct, and it is feasible. But protecting the entire eastern seaboard with a dam, I think, would be interesting to say the least.
Let's talk about energy policy for a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I am pro nuclear.
Yes.
I like some of the technology that actually existed in the 60s and was being tested, but then was mothballed.
Yeah.
What's it? The intermittent light reactor, which is a feeder reactor, so it can actually feed on its own waste product. Has existed. There's actually one still operating in the U.S. that's been a test facility since the late 60s. I'd like to see those happen. If you look at France, the reason why France is carbon neutral is because of their reactors.
Yep.
And now they're actually talking about shutting them down and realizing that, hey, the amount of solar panels and wind turbines that we're going to have to build to power our country is not economically sustainable if we're shutting down our nuclear reactors. When me and Valerie were out in Arizona, there was a ballot measure that was sponsored by a big conglomerate in California that does solar energy. And they were pushing hardcore for a constitutional amendment that would require, I think it was like no more than 10% of their energy coming from their nuclear power plants. And it was ridiculous to think about, how much how high the cost was going to be, and that Arizona would ultimately end up having to buy energy from California and Texas.
And the way they wrote that, remember, like the way that they wrote that proposal was like, it was so confusing to the average person. You're like, don't you care about the environment? Vote yes on 125. And it's like, well, what does yes mean? And do you hate the environment? Do you hate high energy costs? Then vote no. So do you like high energy costs? But yeah, it made no sense. And all it was doing was padding pockets of a company in California. So
I can't remember, what's the Mesa Verde or something. What was the name of the reactor there?
I mean, that sounds about right. Those are two
Something
words
like
that
that.
frequently in Arizona.
Yeah.
It's a verde candy cactus.
Yeah.
One of the things that absolutely amazes me is that the Carter administration's law on no nuclear waste recycling still exists in this country, where Germany and France have so perfected nuclear recycling that the energy consumption for an entire life of a human being would generate the nuclear waste smaller than a tennis ball.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the other thing, that when people think of nuclear waste, they think of football fields, every day being produced. And the reality is if you took all of the nuclear waste that's ever been produced, by excluding Chernobyl, every facility in the world combined together, it would fill a basketball floor.
Yep.
It's a tiny amount. The problem is the encasements that they have to go into, these giant tubes that then have to be buried. And then, we've never opened the Yucatan Mountain facility where it was all supposed to be held at. It was built by the feds, but then they've never authorized the transportation. So all that material is actually sitting at the reactor site. But I think we need to have the approach that I would take if I was president, is one, end all subsidies to all energy companies, whether it be green or oil. Those companies are receiving massive amounts of taxpayer money. So let's just cut that right there. Survive on your own innovations. As a policy standpoint, we talked about this here in Indiana a few years ago, was if we really wanted to go green, instead of mandating this or mandating that, and you have to use this type of technology on your home or your business, if there was something that we wanted to promote and encourage people to do, well, the state can use its buying power to buy that product. So you want cars that or trucks that run on hydrogen? Great. The state buys hydrogen vehicles for its fleet. The state can then, use whatever technology it wants to power its buildings, or, you want electric cars. The state can do that and show, hey, this is viable. It does work. We don't have to mandate it to you. We're using it as, the state government and, on the municipal level. That's a great way of encouraging people to adopt those types of things, that you don't have to mandate it. But so that's, as president or governor, that's what I would do, is one, end the subsidies, first day, end those subsidies, and then say, okay, let's research the technology. What can we adopt today? What do we have the infrastructure to use today? Okay, our facilities, our drivers will use that technology now to demonstrate that it is viable to the public so that they can adopt it if they choose to. But, telling somebody who lives, in my neighborhood, which is one of the poorest areas in the city of Indianapolis, hey, your car, you're evil for driving your gas guzzling car. You don't care about your children. You have to go and get an electric car. And we're going to make it difficult for you because you're driving a combustion-based engine. We're going to make it difficult for you. We're going to raise your insurance. We're going to have to make you take all of these environmental road safety tests on your vehicle every year. We're going to do all of this stuff to you. Eventually you get stuck using public transit, which is exactly what they want. Sad face.
It's very true. A lot of these types of initiatives really always come down on the backs of the least privileged communities, either economically or socially.
This sounds like the topic for a whole evening. We
Yes.
talk libertarian energy policy. But right now it's time for number 11 on the news quiz.
It is. It is our last question of the night.
G. Gordon Liddy.
G. Gordon Liddy, a lawyer and former FBI agent, died this week at 90. He was also behind which presidential scandal? Iran-Contra, media leaks, Teapot Dome, Watergate, or Whitewater?
Watergate. I used to have a show on 106.7 in DC, and my mom would listen to it every day. That guy was kooky, but she loved listening to him. He has a great voice.
Yeah.
Had a great voice.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a great voice too. Why doesn't everybody tune in and listen to me when I do my radio show?
So congratulations. We got 10.67% out of 11. We did better than or as well as 81% of New York Times readers. So we are in the top 19%. Look at that.
Nice.
Good job. Thanks, Evan.
So
That was
that's fun.
fun.
Yeah, it's always fun. This kind of brings us down to our good nights and goodbyes here. Do you have anything going up in the next week that we want to talk about? Any conventions that we're going to this week?
No. What am I doing this week? Justin Amash Town Hall, hosted by the Pragmatist Caucus, will be April 25th. And I think Joe Jorgensen is a couple days before that, Laura. Is that right? The 21st?
Mm-hmm.
Town Hall with Joe Jorgensen.
So,
anything coming up in Indiana?
On next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m., the founder of Market Wagon, which is a company that basically brings the farmers market to you. They work with farmers and local producers, have a central processing place where they put together their bags and baskets, and then Market Wagon delivers it to the customers.
Mm-hmm.
The owner and founder of that is going to be on a live stream with me on the LPIN Facebook page Tuesday at 6:30.
Awesome.
And he's going to be talking about his efforts to try to actually limit the regulations that would breed competition against him. He actually helped introduce a bill and worked really hard to get his own to make it easier for competition against him. So very, very libertarian. He wants people to compete. He wants more people in the space and doing these sorts of things. So really cool. So we'll be talking about that.
That's awesome.
Somebody in the comments said that the Iowa convention is next weekend, and that's right. I talked to Mike Connor today, and I should have remembered that. I will not be in Iowa. Laura, are you going to Iowa?
it might be. That's sort of my general plan, but there's some senior parent things happening the next few weeks, so I'm waiting till the last minute before I make that decision.
This is the last one, or not the last convention, the last child. So you have to.
My last child, it's my baby, and I kind of want to enjoy it before we've got an empty nest and all that sort of stuff. But
yeah, I know my next convention that I'm going to is West Virginia, and I'll be there on the 17th. So hopefully lots of people are there.
Kansas May 1st.
What's going on with the 50th anniversary? Do you guys have any insider information that you can leak to the rest of the country?
I believe that the website will be going live very soon. I was on a call about that last night.
Excellent.
Yeah. I know contracts are being finalized. So lots of interesting stuff. Some of the exhibits for the museum are already starting to be discussed, and there are going to be some amazing pieces there.
And lots of
I'm
fun.
excited.
Yeah,
I
it should
hope
be
to
good.
go wherever it is.
Well, it's going to be in Colorado, so
Yes.
just book a plane
Oh.
ticket.
Oh,
The really sad thing is,
Colorado.
for
I'm
those
just
of
kidding.
us in the
Colorado.
in the think tank network is that it's the same at the same time as the SPN annual meeting. Well, there may be a day difference between them, and that's down in Florida. So if I'm going to make both, I'm going to be spending a lot of time on planes, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But I guess on that note, it's good night, all of our viewers. Thank you again for watching. We will see you again next week for another episode of Libertarians at Large with another amazing guest. So, everyone, well, you're kind of our high watermark right now.
Okay.
There you go. But I say that every week, so hey. But everyone, have a great night. We will all see you next week, and hope you are continuing to watch, share, like, and tell all your friends about Libertarians at Large. Again, good night.
Thank you. Bye, Evan. Thanks, Evan.